Let's start with where this got signed. Not the Oval Office, not the State Department, not even a proper diplomatic ceremony with flags and handshakes and a podium. Donald Trump signed the Memorandum of Understanding to end a war that killed thousands of people at a wine reception in Versailles, France, hosted by Emmanuel Macron on the sidelines of the G7 summit. He told reporters about it afterward, almost as an afterthought, like he was mentioning he'd grabbed a second glass of champagne. I need you to sit with that for a second, because the setting tells you everything about how seriously this administration is actually treating the end of a war that cost 13 American lives. Here's what we know happened today. June 18th, President Trump and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian formally signed the Memorandum of Understanding. Pakistan's Prime Minister, who mediated this whole thing, posted on X that Iran would instantly reopen the Strait of Hormuz and the US would immediately lift the naval blockade. Sounds clean. Sounds decisive. Except nothing about what's actually happening on the ground matches that clean narrative. Let's be real about the contradictions, because there are a lot of them, and they all matter. First, the blockade. Trump posted on Sunday that he was authorizing the immediate removal of the naval blockade. Then he walked that back and said the blockade would only lift once the deal is formally signed Friday. Then, a multilateral naval command, which includes the U.S. military, said Monday that the blockade was still fully in place. Then on Tuesday, a senior Iranian diplomat said the blockade had already been lifted. And meanwhile, on the actual water, in actual reality, 5 sanctioned Iranian ships tankers carrying millions of barrels of crude oil have crossed the blockade line in the last 24 hours alone. Ships are moving. Nobody official can agree on whether they're allowed to be moving. That's not diplomacy. That's chaos with a press release stapled to it. Major shipping companies aren't buying any of it either. The head of safety and security at BIMCO, one of the largest international shipping associations in the world, said on the record that given the lack of details and a history of overly optimistic reassurances from this administration, the security situation remains volatile, and it's still very risky for ships to start transiting normally. When the actual industry that depends on this water being safe says don't trust the announcement yet, that should tell you something. Now here's the part that should make you angry. Today, while Trump was literally signing this peace deal in France, Israeli warplanes were striking targets in southern Lebanon. Multiple locations. Nabate al-Foka, the outskirts of Kfar Tebnet, a drone strike on Ansariya. This is happening right now, on the same day this deal got signed. And Iran's foreign minister has been explicit, he said publicly, that if Israeli forces stay in Lebanon and keep attacking, it violates the very agreement everyone's celebrating today. So what did Israel's government say in response to that warning? Israel's far-right national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, said it plainly. Trump's agreement does not bind us. Read that again. A senior minister in the government of America's closest ally in this entire conflict just said, out loud, on the record, that the deal Trump signed today doesn't apply to them. Trump himself, this week, had to publicly criticize Netanyahu's handling of the Lebanon strikes, calling them vicious and too much, and saying it's complicating his ability to finalize this deal. The President of the United States is criticizing the Prime Minister of Israel in public, and Israel's own government is openly telling him his deal doesn't constrain their behavior. That's not an ally falling in line behind American diplomacy. That's an ally telling the President of the United States to his face that his signature foreign policy achievement is optional for them. And then there's Trump's own comments today, which should honestly be the headline everywhere instead of buried in the 15th paragraph of coverage. Speaking to reporters in France, Trump said this, and these are his actual words: "If I don't like it, we'll go back to shooting at them, dropping bombs on their head. If I don't like it, if they don't behave, we'll go right back to dropping bombs right smack in the middle of their head. That's the President of the United States, hours after signing what's being called a historic peace agreement, threatening to resume bombing Iran if they don't behave. Behave like Iran is a misbehaving child and not a sovereign nation that just went through 3.5 months of war with American and Israeli forces. Does that sound like the language of a finalized, stable peace deal to you? Or does it sound like a ceasefire being held together by a man who's one bad mood away from ordering airstrikes again? He also admitted something important in that same conversation, that the deal does not include immediate sanctions relief for Iran. He said he'd clarify that at a later date. Later date. The thing Iran has said over and over is its top priority getting out from under crushing economic sanctions, and Trump is telling reporters he'll get back to them on it eventually. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reported, citing people familiar with the actual agreement, that the U.S. will let Iran immediately begin selling oil and fuel, with sanctions waivers on oil sales taking effect right after signing. So which is it? No sanctions relief, clarified later? Or immediate oil sanctions waivers, already agreed to? Two different stories from two different sources, both supposedly describing the same signed document. This is the pattern with this entire deal from day one. Conflicting statements. Walked back announcements. Allies saying they're not bound by it. The president threatening to resume bombing the same day he signs it. And actual commercial shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz still sitting in the single digits compared to a historic average of around 135 vessels passing through every single day before this war started. Single digits. After a deal that was supposed to reopen the strait, the numbers on the water tell you the real story better than any press conference does. Even Trump's own party isn't sold. Senator Lindsey Graham, a longtime Iran hawk, a Republican, someone who has spent years pushing for exactly this kind of confrontation with Tehran, told reporters today he's pretty skeptical about where these talks go from here. His exact words, "I don't know yet," when asked if the deal is good or bad. He said he likes the idea of opening the straits and ending the conflict, but on the actual long-term terms, he's reserving judgment. When a hawkish Republican senator who met directly with the defense secretary about this exact deal is telling CBS News on the record that he doesn't know if it's good or bad. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement from inside Trump's own coalition. Here's the bottom line, and it's not complicated. A war that killed thousands of people, including 13 American service members, that bombed a civilian water supply, that disrupted global shipping, and sent oil markets into chaos for months. That war just got a memorandum of understanding signed at a wine reception in France. The blockade status is contested. The sanctions relief is contradictory. Israel says it's not bound by the agreement and is actively bombing Lebanon the same day it gets signed. Iran says continued Israeli strikes violate the deal. And the President of the United States, hours after putting his signature on paper, is threatening to start dropping bombs again if Iran doesn't behave. This is not what the end of a war is supposed to look like. This is what a fragile, half-finished ceasefire dressed up in victory language looks like. And the actual negotiations on the hard stuff, the nuclear program, the real sanctions framework. What happens with Lebanon don't even start until Friday, at a mountain resort in Switzerland. 60 days from some kind of final resolution that nobody can guarantee will actually happen. 13 American families lost someone in this war. They deserve more than a wine reception announcement and a president threatening to resume bombing on the same day he claims he ended the fighting. They deserve clarity. They deserve consistency. They deserve a peace that actually holds, instead of a paper agreement that the people involved are already publicly contradicting and threatening to break. Don't let the headlines convince you this is over. Watch what happens Friday in Switzerland. Watch what Israel does in Lebanon over the next few days. Watch whether those oil tankers keep moving or get stopped again. Because the real test of whether this war actually ended starts now, not when the cameras were rolling at a party in Versailles. If you think the American people deserve more honesty about what was actually signed today, share this video. Comment below, do you trust this deal, or do you think we're back to bombing within the month? Because right now, even the people who negotiated it don't seem totally sure.